Love you.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.
Charlie, I think you need to see this.
What is this?
Your wife has been killed.
I want mission-specific training, cash, and a new identity.
Have you lost your mind?
I want to find and kill the people who murdered my wife. You held a gun to my wife's head.
You have the wrong person.
No, I have exactly the right person.
In a dimly lit garage, a man named Charlie Heller is working on repairing a small Cessna plane, a birthday gift from his wife Sarah. Shortly after, his wife walks in and tells Charlie that her car will be arriving soon, as she's heading to London for a business conference. With a sigh, Sarah admits she doesn't know how she'll survive without his coffee for 5 days. She tries once again to convince him to come along, but Charlie gently declines, saying he has important work to handle at the office. He promises he'll join her next time. He walks her to the car and the two say their goodbyes. An hour later, Charlie arrives at his workplace, the CIA headquarters in Langley. He works in the Decryption and Analysis Division. On his way to his department, he runs into a colleague known as the Bear, a seasoned field agent. Years ago, Charlie saved Bear's life on a mission by remotely guiding him out of an ambush. Since then, Bear has held deep respect for him. Charlie takes the elevator to his floor. As he steps out, an advanced scanner analyzes his face and checks for any foreign objects. This cutting-edge technology was developed by Charlie himself, who boasts an IQ of 170. He quietly settles into his office and starts working. Soon, he receives a message from someone named Inquilene, a mysterious contact he's been communicating with for the past 5 years. Inquilene frequently provides him with classified intel for a price. After receiving a new batch of classified documents, Inquilene warns Charlie that these documents could put his entire agency at risk.
Be careful with this data. It's highly compromising for your agency.
Then Charlie once again tries to guess Inquilene's location, this time suggesting Istanbul, but Inquilene just brushes him off. Charlie begins analyzing the material but struggles to crack the code. Later, he has lunch with some colleagues who are surprised that Charlie, a quiet, introverted brainiac, is friends with the charismatic field agent, the Bear.
Saved his life.
Back at his desk while still working on the code, Charlie gets a call from Sarah. She informs him she landed in London. He tells her he already knew because he tracked her. She then playfully asks Charlie what he's wearing. Busy, he tells her he'll call her back soon and ends the call. Determined, Charlie heads to a restricted access zone, hoping to use more advanced tools to decrypt the file. After intense work, he finally breaks through. What he uncovers is shocking. Top-secret U.S. government files revealing that a drone strike, disguised as a suicide bombing, was authorized and covered up. A news clip embedded in the files reports 50 casualties, including Danish officers and U.S. Marines. Even more disturbing, the operation was orchestrated by none other than his superior, Chief Moore. That night, Charlie tries calling Sarah to ease his mind, but she doesn't answer, so he leaves a voicemail. I miss you. The next day, Charlie heads to work as usual, only to be thrown off when he spots Chief Moore waiting for him. Moore cryptically tells him to follow him to the director's office. Inside, Charlie meets the recently appointed Director O'Brien. With a heavy heart, she explains there's been a deadly terrorist attack at the Christopher Street Hotel in London, and Sarah was one of the victims. Charlie's world stops. He insists that Sarah is still at her conference, but Moore turns on the news. A breaking report reveals that 4 assailants stormed the hotel, took 4 hostages, and killed 2 of them, one of whom is an American woman. Moore also shows surveillance footage from the hotel, confirming Charlie's worst fear: Sarah is truly dead. Charlie returns home seeking solace, but finds reporters swarming outside, souring his mood even further. The next morning, Charlie heads to the executive floor. He confronts Chief Moore and senior CIA supervisor Caleb, demanding justice for his wife's death. He also expresses his disbelief. How could the terrorists have slipped past London's 900,000 security cameras? Moore promises to investigate, but Caleb cuts in, telling Charlie to focus on his health first. The next day, Sarah's body and belongings arrive by plane. Charlie opens her suitcase and finds a small gift she had planned to give him. As he reads the note she left inside, he breaks down. Determined, Charlie researches the attack, but Sarah's fearful face haunts him and he shuts the computer down. Back at work, Charlie hacks into hotel feeds where Sarah stayed and nearby surveillance cameras. Presenting his findings to his superiors, he lays out the timeline. The four-person team stole a getaway vehicle at 1:24 a.m. in the East End. The suspects entered the hotel through the service entrance at 11 a.m. And all four met with a firm called Impact Investments, an Indonesian outfit, before the deal went bad. When Impact's security detail intervened, the assailants killed him, grabbed hostages. Sarah was taken because she tried to protect someone. Charlie also reveals that he ran both voice and facial analysis, identifying the man who was holding Sarah as Mishka Blazic from Moscow. The second man is Laurence Elish, a former South African Special Forces operative. By reviewing city cameras, dash cams, and body cam footage, Charlie uncovered a third name, Horst Schiller, linked to mercenary contracts, and the one who pulled the trigger. And the fourth one, Gretchen, a former intelligence officer now in Paris, frequently seen at the same restaurant. Charlie realizes from their reaction that Moore and Caleb already knew. Moore simply orders him to attend therapy. During therapy, Charlie confesses his guilt for not going to the conference with his wife and anger at the agency's indifference. The therapist tells him he must accept Sarah's death, but Charlie refuses to give up. The next morning, Charlie hides a chip in his ID badge. Slipping past security, he enters his department and begins copying classified files. That night, Charlie heads to a bar. Moments later, the owner asks him to keep an eye on the place while he goes to the storage room to restock. Then Charlie's eyes linger on an old jukebox. The next morning, Charlie, armed with damning evidence, confronts Moore and Caleb. He lists Moore's unauthorized Black Ops missions, bombing a Syrian hospital, striking an Allied base in Yemen, costing 1,000 civilian lives and many more. Moore laughs, saying he got no evidence, but Charlie points to signatures proving Moore's involvement and threatens to take everything to the director. Charlie then reveals he's triggered a dead man switch. If he doesn't enter a code every 5 hours, the evidence goes to 3 top journalists. His demands: full CIA training, fake passports, cash, a gun, and intel on Sarah's killers. At first, his superiors laugh, until they see he's serious. Grudgingly, they agree. Outside, Charlie reaches his car and vomits from the stress. Back upstairs, Moore calls Charlie's bluff on the dead man switch. Caleb warns they can't risk it. They'll search for the trigger, and if it is a bluff, then he says they can arrange a fatal accident during training. Later, Caleb and the agents try to figure out how Charlie got the confidential digital files out of the agency. One agent suggests he might have used a skimmer, a small device that can secretly copy data from electronic systems. But another agent argues that wouldn't work, since their systems are too secure for a skimmer to access. One of the agents cuts in, noting that skimmers can be used on printers. He comes to the conclusion that Charlie probably sent the confidential files to a printer, rewrote its software, and used a magnetic strip to secretly copy the data. What stumps them is how he smuggled the chip past security. Reviewing footage, they find that 6 days earlier, Charlie had indeed purchased a magnetic strip at Best Buy. Meanwhile, Charlie arrives at a training facility. There, he meets his training officer, retired Colonel Henderson, who comes off as distant and cold. At the camp, Charlie struggles to handle even basic firearms. But the next day, when they learn how to make homemade bombs, Charlie quickly puts one together with surprising skill. Henderson watches, clearly impressed. Charlie may not be good with guns, but he's a natural at building bombs. Henderson also creates a bunch of fake passports for Charlie. Back at the CIA, one of the agents uncovers that Charlie had been a regular at a certain bar. When they head there to investigate, they find a cassette hidden beneath the jukebox. That night, Henderson enters Charlie's room and simply tells him, "You're not a killer." Charlie insists that he'll kill the person responsible for his wife's death. Henderson pulls out his gun and hands it to Charlie, asking him to aim at his chest. Charlie's hands tremble, and he lowers the gun. Henderson warns him, "You're not stupid, but going after a terrorist mafia with CIA agents on your trail? That's suicide." Then he leaves. Back at the CIA, the agents spend hours decrypting the cassette. After nearly 5 hours, they uncover the truth. Charlie had been bluffing about the dead man's switch. They inform Moore immediately. But unbeknownst to Moore and Caleb, Charlie is listening in from his room. The chip he hid on his ID badge was actually a bug he planted on the Black Ops file Charlie handed to Moore. Moore immediately calls Henderson and orders him to apprehend Charlie. But Charlie, always one step ahead, has already fled using a fake passport and cash. Moore, furious, hangs up the call. Then he examines the documents Charlie gave them and discovers the bug. "Bugging a CIA officer is treason," Moore mutters angrily. An hour later, Charlie is flying to London. His thoughts drift back to when his wife gave him a plane as a birthday gift. Slightly damaged, but heartfelt. At the checkpoint, after verifying his identity, he's cleared to proceed. Back at the CIA, Caleb informs Moore that Charlie's fake passport has lit up. He's now en route to Paris. Determined to keep this under wraps, Moore orders Caleb to send Henderson to track Charlie down. Meanwhile, Charlie walks through the busy streets of Paris and checks into a hotel near the restaurant where Gretchen frequently dines. When he spots her, he discreetly plants a tracker on her phone. That night, he goes to her apartment complex. After making sure she's gone, he heads to the entrance. He doesn't have the building code, but when another resident opens the door, he quietly slips inside. Once inside, Charlie watches a YouTube tutorial on lockpicking and manages to get inside. Wasting no time, he snaps photos of her schedule and opens a drawer, finding a gun. His mind flashes back to Henderson telling him, "You're not a killer." To prove Henderson wrong, Charlie picks up the gun and waits for Gretchen. But in the end, he couldn't do it. He flees back to his hotel room. Reviewing the photos, he notices something. Gretchen is undergoing treatment at a hospital for her allergies. Suddenly, he sees Sarah, his wife, gently gesturing for him to sleep. But it's only a hallucination. The next morning, Charlie buys a bouquet of flowers. Moments later, he spots Gretchen entering the hospital. He follows her in. Inside the hospital, the doctor notices the computer screen malfunctioning and momentarily steps away to fix it. Seizing the opportunity, Charlie slips in. He fills Gretchen's chamber with a concentrated dose of pollen, triggering a severe allergic reaction. As she begins to lose consciousness, Charlie pleads with her to reveal Schiller's whereabouts, telling her that Schiller took his wife's life. But Gretchen refuses to talk. Charlie opens the chamber, hoping she'll give in, but she attacks him. She escapes, but as Charlie chases after her, she's struck by an oncoming car. Calmly, Charlie retrieves her cell phone and flees to his hotel room. There, he starts packing his belongings and boards a bus to Marseille, haunted all the while by memories of his wife. Back at the CIA, Director O'Brien questions Moore about Gretchen's death, especially with the French ambassador breathing down her neck. Moore, with an air of indifference, replies that it looks like Gretchen may have been taken out by one of their own. Later that night, in an attempt to unwind, Charlie enters a local bar. But instead of peace, he's haunted by a new memory: the people who've died because of him. Suddenly, he spots Henderson. Shocked, Charlie bolts from the bar with Henderson chasing close behind. He ducks into another nearby bar, hides in the bathroom to evade Henderson, but a few minutes later he comes out. The two finally come face to face. Charlie asks how Henderson tracked him. With a smirk, Henderson says he tracked Gretchen's phone once Charlie grabbed it. A rookie mistake. He adds, "Doesn't matter how smart someone is, when they panic, they lose." Henderson tells Charlie that he doesn't actually want to arrest him but has to. Despite this, he admits that Charlie surprised him, something that doesn't happen often. Then Charlie calmly says, "I set a bomb," and takes off. Moments later, the entire bar erupts into chaos. The next morning, Charlie sends a message to Inquilene asking for help. After confirming the meeting location, he boards a cargo plane to Istanbul. Upon arriving, he heads to the meeting location, a small, ordinary-looking restaurant. He texts Inquilene. A nearby man's phone dings, so Charlie approaches him. But just then, a woman appears and says, "He's not who you're looking for. Come with me." Inquilene, as it turns out, is a woman, not what Charlie pictured. Inquilene asks why he reached out. Charlie explains the circumstances of his wife's death. Inquilene nods solemnly. She already knew. She drives him to her home. Along the way, Charlie asks how long she's been involved in the hacking game. She replies it's been 5 years, ever since her husband, who was a CIA asset and had previously worked for Russian intelligence, the KGB, died 6 years ago. "He was the original Inquilene," she says. "Before he died, he taught me everything: how to encrypt, how to dig through systems, how to survive." Charlie expresses his condolences. Inquilene tells him the official story was that her husband fell from a window. Accidental, they said. She reveals that she still keeps in contact with Charlie's department, just in case she ever needs to call in a favor. They arrive at her home. Inside, Inquilene says quietly, "This is the only place I've managed to stay longer than 3 years. I'm tired of running." Charlie then questions about what she would do when the Russians come knocking down. She takes a gun out, but Charlie looks dubious whether that can keep them off. But Inquilene calmly replies, "It's not for them. It's for me when they do." Then Charlie and Inquilene get down to business. Charlie identifies Schiller as the ringleader of the group, the man responsible for sourcing mercenaries for people like Chief Moore. The other man, Laurence Ellish, is known for trafficking a wide range of weapons, buying cheap and selling them for profit. Inquilene offers to pose as a seller of cheap weapons in the arms market to engage Ellish. Charlie agrees. Then there's Mishka. Charlie explains that Mishka is flashy. He travels frequently and posts everything online. Using one of his social media photos, Charlie points out several clues. The vineyard behind Mishka appears larger and more spread out than typical, suggesting a warmer climate. The sunlight hitting the wine glass suggests the vineyard is aligned north-south, and a church in the background looks like it has Spanish architecture. Finally, there's a faint reflection in the glass, possibly of someone else, perhaps Mishka's girlfriend. Inquilene runs a facial recognition scan and identifies the woman. According to her Instagram posts, she was recently in Madrid. The next day, Director O'Brien delivers a speech about restoring America's global power. Meanwhile, Caleb instructs his team to keep eyes on all three, Schiller, Ellish, and Mishka, as Charlie might be targeting them. That afternoon, O'Brien meets Moore. She doesn't mince words. Though newly appointed, she tells him firmly that she suspects he's not acting transparently and warns him to stop running Black Ops without her authorization. Moore mockingly replies that she has his full support.
I'll tell you a story. Your predecessor sat me down at this very same table, no more than a week into his term, and gave me pretty much this exact same speech. Oh, wait. Maybe it was his predecessor. I can't remember. Anyway, I'll tell you what I told them. You have my full support.
After the meeting, O'Brien gets into her car. Her assistant shows her a photo. Henderson has been spotted in Madrid. Moore sent him there. O'Brien quietly instructs her team to send one of their own agents to keep an eye on him. Back with Charlie and Inquilene, they manage to access surveillance from the hotel where Mishka is staying. But Charlie grows uneasy. He tells Inquilene that the CIA might be tracking him too, and decides he needs to move. Before leaving, he tells Inquilene to keep an eye on Henderson. He's the one Moore sent after him. The next day, Charlie arrives at the hotel. He learns that Mishka enjoys night swimming at the rooftop pool, so he begins studying the pool's structure and its glass enclosure. Meanwhile, Henderson is closing in on Charlie. A day later in the hotel lobby, Charlie notices a man watching him and quietly alerts Inquilene through his earpiece. She quickly tells him, the man is a CIA. A beat later, she adds that Henderson is nearby too and urges Charlie to abort immediately. But Charlie sticks to the plan. He confronts Mishka at the rooftop pool and calmly asks about Schiller's location, stating that Schiller was the one responsible for his wife's death. Mishka doesn't respond, just gives him a cold, unreadable stare. Charlie pulls out a remote and says it controls a decompression device that's been slowly removing the air between the sheets of glass in the pool. He warns that if he presses the button, the glass will break. Mishka panics and tries to escape. Charlie presses the button. The glass breaks. Mishka falls 16 stories to his death. Inquilin immediately directs Charlie to the safest exit. On the way out, Henderson ambushes him, but another CIA operative intervenes, leading to a brutal fight. Henderson eventually kills the other agent, but not without taking a fatal wound himself. As Henderson bleeds out, Charlie hesitates, wanting to help. But Inquilin's voice cuts in. "You need to leave." Reluctantly, Charlie runs. The next day, Director O'Brien summons Moore to her office. Casually, she asks where Charlie is. Moore lies, saying Charlie is currently on bereavement leave. But O'Brien isn't buying it. Meanwhile, Caleb and his team review footage from the hotel and realize Charlie had help. One agent digs into Charlie's encrypted chats and finds a message to someone named Inquilin. "If I have to guess, you're a 50-year-old man living in Istanbul." That afternoon, Charlie feeds the turkeys. Inquilin asks how he's holding up. Charlie just smiles. She confides that after her husband died, she filled the silence with work, and gently asks if Charlie really wants to fill the silence with what he is doing now. At the CIA, the agents uncover the truth. The real agent, known as Inquilin, is deceased. Russian intelligence believes his wife may be operating in his place and likely the one helping Charlie. Caleb alerts the Russian embassy in Istanbul. That night, Inquilin quietly asks if she can sleep beside Charlie. He hesitates for a moment, then nods. But just minutes later, the sharp squawking of turkeys breaks the silence. Inquilin rushes to the computer and notices the agents are closing in. She quickly hits a reset command, wiping all the incriminating evidence. She and Charlie slip out through the back door, disappearing into the night just as the agents break in. Drones close in, and boats chase them. Amid the chaos, Inquilin is shot. Charlie drives off, finds a quiet garage, and mourns her death. The next morning, despite the crushing guilt over Inquilin's death, Charlie moves forward with her plan. He buys a new phone and contacts Elish, luring him with the promise of cheap weapons. The next day, Charlie travels to Romania. At the meeting spot, he records a video of himself and hacks a surveillance feed in Berlin to throw the CIA off his trail. An hour later, Elish arrives to a ringing phone. Charlie instructs him to look inside the box, which he says contains weapons. But instead, Elish finds IEDs. Charlie tells him the bombs are motion sensitive. If he moves, they'll detonate. Then Charlie tells him to look at a photo. It's Sarah. He demands to know where Schiller is. Elish replies that Schiller is likely operating in Russian waters and typically receives deliveries at Primorsk, a major Baltic seaport. Charlie presses him on how he contacts Schiller. Elish explains that Schiller only accepts messages sent through secret codes to his two men, Simon and Christoph. Once the codes reach them, Schiller knows the messages from Elish.
Numbers are there. The codes are by their names. Simon and Christoph.
Charlie takes his phone and walks away. Charlie reaches Baltic port and rents a room, and he also manages to crack the puzzle Sarah left behind for him. The next day, he spots a suspicious vehicle and sends code to both of Schiller's men. One of the three men checks his phone, likely Schiller. Charlie follows him but loses sight of Schiller, so he follows his goons and takes a photo of the small boat they use. Just as he ducks into a cafe, the bear shows up. He tells Charlie he came on his own, no orders. He urges Charlie to walk away. This isn't what Sarah would have wanted.
I can't go home.
She's not there.
That night, Charlie buys a smartwatch and some tools, then tracks down the yacht using the boat's registration number. The following morning, he approaches one of the goons from the previous day. He asks about his colleague from yesterday, but the goon brushes him off. That night, Charlie studies maps and learns more about the sea routes Schiller might be using. The next morning, Charlie is ambushed by Schiller's men and taken aboard the yacht. Schiller questions who sent him. Charlie says he came alone. He reveals he's only there to avenge his wife. Schiller says Sarah's death wasn't personal, just a signal to law enforcement. He also notes that Charlie never kills up close as he used traps to kill his colleagues. He hands Charlie a loaded gun and dares him to shoot. Charlie couldn't. Charlie calmly reveals his final play. He's taken control of the yacht. Schiller laughs it off, insisting the vessel is CIA-administered. Charlie explains that he had previously worked on the vessel's encryption protocols, and by leveraging the phone numbers of Schiller's men, he was able to exploit a backdoor in the system. This allowed him to reroute the ship into Finnish waters, where authorities were waiting to apprehend Schiller and his crew. The authorities capture him. The next day, O'Brien addresses the public as news breaks about drone strikes carried out by suicide bombers and several unauthorized black ops, leading to the arrest of multiple high-ranking CIA officials. She vows greater transparency, and when a reporter asks about the whistleblower's status, O'Brien confirms they are still with the agency. After his shift, Charlie is pleasantly surprised to see Henderson, who tells him he admires him and is proud of what he's done. Henderson promises they'll meet again soon and leaves. Charlie then visits his wife's grave. Later, he heads to the garage and takes the Cessna plane, gifted to him by his wife, out for a ride.